The cashier was humiliated every day until she helped a man who was... Jessica Taylor felt her stomach churn every time she saw Brandon Miller approaching her register. The manager of Riverside Grocery in Denver had a knack for turning even the smallest mistake into a public humiliation that echoed throughout the store. That Tuesday morning, when Jessica charged only $2.50 for an item that cost $3, the world came crashing down on her once again. "Jessica!" Brandon's voice cut through the air like a razor. "You've done it again, 50 cents short." The 22-year-old lowered her head, feeling the heat rise to her face as all the customers in line watched her. Her hands trembled as she tried to correct the mistake in the system. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brandon, it was an accident. An accident?" Brandon raised his voice even louder, gesturing dramatically. "This is the third time this week. Do you think money grows on trees?" Jessica bit her lower lip, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She needed that job more than anything. Her grandmother Margaret had been in the hospital for 2 weeks, and the costs of medicine and medical care were eating up her entire paycheck. "I'll deduct it from your salary," Brandon continued, now with a cruel smile. "And if it happens again, you can look for another job." In line, an elderly woman sighed loudly, showing her indignation. A young father holding a baby shook his head in disapproval, but it was the man at the end of the line who caught Jessica's attention. He held only a can of sardines and a pack of saltine crackers, and his blue eyes shone with a mix of sadness and outrage. When it was finally the old man's turn, Jessica tried to compose herself. He looked about 75, with neatly combed white hair, simple but clean clothes, and a cane resting beside the counter. "Good afternoon, sir," Jessica said, forcing a smile. Good afternoon, my dear." His voice was gentle, filled with kindness. "Are you all right?" The simple question nearly broke through the walls Jessica had built. No one ever asked if she was okay, not even her own mother, who was always complaining about life. "I'm fine, thank you for asking." He studied her for a few seconds, as if he could see right through her mask of pretended calm. "My name is Walter Thompson. And yours?" "Jessica Taylor." "Jessica?" He repeated the name slowly, as if savoring each syllable. "A beautiful name. It means from the sea, doesn't it?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story, Machi. She nodded, surprised by the man's knowledge. Few customers ever talked to her beyond what was necessary. "How's your grandmother doing?" The question came out of nowhere, leaving Jessica completely bewildered. "How do you know about my grandmother?" Walter smiled mysteriously, placing a $5 bill on the counter. "People who carry so much weight on their shoulders are usually caring for someone very special." Jessica processed the purchase in silence, intrigued by the man. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. "Keep the change," Walter said as Jessica went to hand him back $2. "I can't accept that, Mr. Walter." "Of course you can. Use it to buy yourself a coffee. You look like you need it." Before Jessica could protest, Walter was already walking away, moving slowly with his cane. At the store's entrance, he turned and waved at her. That night, Jessica visited her grandmother in the hospital. Margaret Wilson, 81 years old, had been admitted 15 days earlier due to complications from diabetes. The grey hair spread across the pillow, and the tired eyes broke Jessica's heart. "How was work today, sweetheart?" Jessica couldn't bring herself to share the daily humiliations. Margaret already carried enough guilt for being sick. "It was fine, Grandma. I met a very kind man today, Walter Thompson." Margaret's reaction was unexpected. She sat up in bed, eyes wide. "Walter Thompson, are you sure about that name?" "Yes, why? Do you know him?" Margaret fell silent for a long moment, nervously fidgeting with the hospital sheet. "It was just curiosity, my dear." But Jessica sensed there was more, the way her grandmother averted her gaze, the tension in her shoulders. There was a story there. The next day, Walter appeared again at Riverside Grocery. This time, he only brought a liter of milk and a baguette. When he reached Jessica's checkout, she was eager to talk to him. "Good morning, Mr. Walter." "Good morning, Jessica. How's your grandmother today?" The direct question surprised her again. She's doing a little better. But you keep asking about her like you know her." Walter paid for his items and stood there, as if wrestling with himself. "Sometimes the past comes back to find us in the most unexpected ways," he finally said. "What does that mean?" "It means maybe it's time for some truths to come out." Before Jessica could ask more, Brandon stormed over like a hurricane. "Jessica, why are you chatting during work hours? Do you think you're here to make friends?" "Mr. Brandon, I don't want to hear it." Brandon turned to Walter. "And you move along, you're holding up the line." Walter looked at Brandon with striking calm. "Young man, I don't think it's necessary to speak to the young lady that way." "Listen here, old man." Brandon puffed out his chest. "I'm the one in charge here. If you don't like the service, go shop somewhere else." "Maybe I will," Walter replied, picking up his cane. He glanced at Jessica and whispered, "Be patient, my dear. Some things take time to resolve." Jessica spent the rest of the day thinking about Walter's cryptic words. There was something about him that deeply intrigued her, the way he asked about her grandmother, as if he knew details of her life. And Margaret's reaction to hearing his name. That night she decided to press her grandmother for answers. "Grandma, I need you to be honest with me. Who is Walter Thompson?" Margaret closed her eyes, as if gathering courage. "Walter was a very dear friend when we were young." "What kind of friend?" "The kind who changes your life forever, sweetheart." Jessica sat on the edge of the bed, sensing she was about to uncover something important about her family's past. "He was my boyfriend," Margaret continued, her voice thick with emotion. "We were engaged to be married in 1968. What happened?" "Life happened, Jessica. My father didn't approve of our relationship. Walter was a teacher, didn't make much. My father wanted me to marry someone who could give me a better life." "And you obeyed?" Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so young, so unsure. I thought my father knew best. I married your grandfather, George, and never saw Walter again." Jessica felt a lump in her throat. Her grandmother had given up love for family pressure, a sacrifice she'd carried for over 50 years. "Do you still think about him?" "Every day, my dear. Every day I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd been braver." The next morning, Jessica arrived at work with a new perspective. Walter wasn't just being kind to her. He was trying to reconnect with the past through her. When he showed up at the grocery store around 10 o'clock, Jessica was ready. "Mr. Walter, I need to talk to you." "About what, my dear?" "About my grandmother, Margaret Wilson." Walter's cane nearly slipped from his hands. He gripped it tightly, his knuckles turning white. How is she?" "She's in the hospital, but she'll be fine. She told me about the two of you." Walter leaned against the checkout counter, his legs seeming to weaken. She remembers me." "Remembers?" "Mr. Walter, she never forgot you." Tears began to stream down the elderly man's wrinkled face. 56 years of pain, longing, and unanswered questions were pouring out in that moment. "I searched for her for years," Walter whispered. "When I came back from Chicago, where I went to try my luck as a college professor, she had married and changed her name. I could never find her." "Well, now you have," said Jessica, holding the old man's trembling hand. "And she needs to see you." Brandon, who had been watching the scene from a distance, approached again with his usual aggression. "Jessica, enough with the drama. This old man is in the way again." This time something snapped inside Jessica. Her grandmother's pain, the constant humiliation, the injustice of it all, turned into a courage she didn't know she had. "This man isn't in anyone's way, Brandon. He's a customer like any other and deserves respect." "Excuse me?" Brandon stepped closer threateningly. "Are you challenging me? I'm standing up for an elderly man who's done nothing wrong." "That's it. You're suspended. Go home and don't come back until you learn to respect authority." Jessica took off her uniform apron and tossed it onto the counter. She had lost her job, but she felt a strange sense of freedom. "Come on, Mr. Walter," she said, offering her arm to support him. "Let's go see my grandmother." The trip to the hospital was silent. Walter was lost in thought, probably reliving decades of memories. Jessica was nervous, imagining how Margaret would react to seeing the man she had loved so long ago. When they arrived at her grandmother's hospital room, Jessica knocked lightly on the door. "Grandma, I brought someone to see you." Margaret looked up from the magazine she'd been pretending to read and froze when she saw Walter in the doorway. Time seemed to stand still in that hospital corridor. "Margaret?" Walter's voice came out as a broken whisper. "Walter." She brought a hand to her chest as if to calm her racing heart. Jessica stepped back discreetly, letting the two reunite after more than 5 decades apart. Walter moved slowly toward the bed, each step filled with emotion. When he was close enough, he reached out to touch Margaret's face. "You're still beautiful," he said, his voice choked. "And you're still a liar," she replied, smiling through her tears. They talked for hours. They shared stories of their lives, the children they'd had, the years they'd spent alone after being widowed. Walter had married too, but he always knew Margaret had been the love of his life. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Jessica watched from afar, moved to see her grandmother smiling in a way she'd never seen before. It was as if Margaret were reliving her youth. 3 days later, as Jessica was at home searching the classifieds for a job, the phone rang. "Hello?" "Jessica, this is Mr. Robert, owner of Riverside Grocery." Jessica's heart raced. Had Brandon made up some lie about her? "Yes, Mr. Robert. I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow morning. We need to talk." "May I ask what about?" "It's better we discuss it in person." Jessica barely slept that night. Her savings were running out, and she urgently needed income to keep helping with her grandmother's expenses. The next morning, she arrived at Riverside Grocery promptly at 9. Robert Johnson was a man in his 50s, always very serious and formal. Jessica had only spoken to him twice since being hired. "Have a seat, Jessica," he said, pointing to a chair across from his desk. "Mr. Robert, if this is about what happened with Mr. Brandon—" "That's exactly it," he interrupted. "I received a very interesting call yesterday." Jessica's throat went dry. "From Mr. Walter Thompson. Do you know him?" "Yes, sir, I do. He told me about the incident that led to your suspension. He also shared some concerning things about Brandon's management." Robert opened a folder on his desk. "I've decided to conduct an internal investigation into Brandon's practices. After speaking with other employees, I found a pattern of behavior inconsistent with our company values." Jessica didn't know whether to feel relieved or apprehensive. Brandon has been transferred to another department with less employee and customer contact, and I'd like to offer you a promotion. "A promotion?" "To head cashier, with a raise and health benefits that include medical coverage for dependents." Jessica couldn't believe her ears. Not only had she gotten her job back, but she was being promoted. "Mr. Robert, I don't know what to say." "Say you accept. I need people of integrity on my team, those who uphold human values even when it comes at a cost." "I accept. Thank you so much." When Jessica left the owner's office, she found Walter waiting in the hallway. "How did you know I'd be here?" "Robert was my former student," he said, smiling. 30 years ago, when I heard you'd lost your job defending me, I called him." "You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did, Jessica. You stood up for a stranger when it could have cost you dearly. That says everything about your character." In the following weeks, Jessica's life took a completely new direction. With her raise and health plan, she transferred Margaret to a private hospital where her grandmother finally received proper diabetes treatment. Walter became a constant visitor. He and Margaret spent hours talking, making up for lost time, two seniors rediscovering love interrupted by life. One afternoon when Jessica arrived for her visit, she found Walter kneeling by Margaret's bed, holding her hand. "What's going on here?" "Walter proposed to me," Margaret said, eyes shining. "And she said yes," Walter added, beaming. Jessica was speechless. Her 81-year-old grandmother was engaged to the man she'd loved since youth. "Are you both sure about this?" "My dear," Margaret said, "at 80 you don't have time for doubts. When true love knocks twice, you fling the door wide open." The wedding was set for 2 months later, after Margaret's discharge. Jessica handled the arrangements with Walter's help. He insisted on covering all expenses. During preparations, Jessica learned more about Walter's past. He'd taught for 40 years in public schools, touching hundreds of lives. He'd never grown wealthy, but had built something far richer. "Do you know what moves me the most about this whole story?" Jessica asked one afternoon as they tasted the wedding cake. "What?" "That you never gave up on love. Even after 50 years, you still believed you could find my grandmother. True love has no expiration date, Jessica. Sometimes it just sleeps, waiting for the right moment to awaken." A week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Jessica was working at the grocery store when Brandon appeared at her checkout as a customer. He had been transferred to the warehouse and rarely came to the sales area. "Hello, Jessica," he said, in a tone very different from his usual one. "Hello, Brandon. How can I help you?" "I wanted to apologize," he said, lowering his head. "For the way I treated you, it wasn't right." Jessica was surprised. It was the first time she'd seen Brandon show any humility. "Working in the warehouse gave me time to think," he continued, "and I realized I was taking out my frustrations on the employees. That wasn't fair." "Thank you for acknowledging that, Brandon. Can you forgive me?" Jessica looked at the man who had made her days hell and saw something she'd never noticed before. He was suffering too. Maybe his aggression was just a mask to hide his own insecurities. "Of course I can," she said. "Everyone deserves a second chance." Margaret and Walter's wedding took place in a small church in downtown Denver. Jessica was the maid of honor, wearing a light blue dress that had belonged to her grandmother in her youth. Walter looked elegant in his gray suit, and Margaret was radiant in a simple but beautiful cream dress. During the ceremony, Jessica couldn't hold back her tears. Seeing her grandmother fulfill a dream that had been delayed for over half a century was one of the most beautiful things she'd ever witnessed. At the reception, held in the church hall, Walter gave a heartfelt speech. "Margaret, you were the first and last love of my life. These 56 years we spent apart taught me that time can separate us, but it can't erase what we feel. Today, at 75, I'm the happiest man in the world." Margaret replied simply, "Walter, you taught me it's never too late to start over. That love has no age, no deadline, and that happiness can arrive when we least expect it." After the wedding, the couple moved into Walter's small house, just a few blocks from the grocery store where Jessica worked. They settled into a peaceful routine, morning walks in the park, afternoons reading together on the porch, evenings watching the old movies they used to enjoy when they were young. Jessica visited them every weekend, always amazed by the closeness they'd developed. It was as if they'd never been apart. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, one day, 3 months after the wedding, Walter came to the grocery store with an unusual proposal. "Jessica, I'd like to talk to you about an idea I had." "Of course, Mr. Walter. What is it?" "Would you like to go to school, get a college degree?" Jessica was confused by the question. "I've always wanted to, but I've never had the financial means. What if I told you I could help with that?" "How so?" Walter smiled mysteriously. "All these years as a teacher, I've been saving money for a country house I never bought. Now that I'm married again and have a place to live, I'd like to use those savings for something more important." "Mr. Walter, I can't accept your financial help." "It's not help, Jessica. It's an investment in the future of a young woman who deserves an opportunity." Jessica felt her eyes filling with tears. "Besides," Walter continued, "you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. If it weren't for you, I would never have found your grandmother again." After much insistence from Walter and Margaret, Jessica finally accepted their help to study business administration at a private university in Denver. She managed to balance her studies with work, attending classes at night and working during the day. During her first year of college, Jessica began applying the knowledge she gained at the university to her job at the grocery store. She implemented a more humanized customer service system, created training programs for employees, and established a zero-tolerance policy for any form of humiliation or abuse. Robert was so impressed by the improvements that he promoted Jessica again, this time to assistant manager. At just 24 years old, she became one of the youngest employees to hold a leadership position in the company. A year and a half after her grandparents' wedding, Jessica graduated. At the graduation ceremony, Walter and Margaret sat in the front row, as proud as if she were their own daughter. During the commencement speech, Jessica was chosen to represent her class. In her speech, she told the story of how a simple act of kindness at the grocery store had changed the course of her life and her family's. Sometimes, she said, looking directly at Walter and Margaret, people come into our lives when we need them most. Other times, we enter others' lives exactly when they need us. What matters is always being open to those human connections that can transform everything. After graduation, Jessica received a job offer from a major supermarket chain to work as a regional manager. The salary was 3 times what she was earning, but she turned it down. "Why?" Robert asked when she told him about the offer. "Because this is my home. It's here that I learned about dignity, respect, and second chances. I don't want to take these values somewhere else. I want to keep applying them here." Robert was so moved by Jessica's loyalty that he decided to make her his successor. He planned to retire in 5 years and wanted to leave the company in the hands of someone who shared his values. 2 years later, Jessica had completely transformed the culture at Riverside Grocery. The company became known in the area for its humane treatment of both employees and customers. They had the lowest employee turnover in the city and the highest customer satisfaction ratings. Brandon, who had spent all this time working in the warehouse, approached Jessica one day with a special request. "Jessica, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'd like a chance to start over." "What do you have in mind?" "I'd like to return to customer service. I know I have to prove I've changed, and I'm willing to start from the bottom again." Jessica studied him for a long moment. She could see a genuine change in him. "Brandon, I'll give you a chance, but with some conditions." "What are they?" "You'll go through a human relations training program. You'll work 3 months as a cashier's assistant under close supervision, and any slip-up, any yelling, any humiliation will be grounds for immediate termination." "I accept all the conditions." Brandon kept his word. He became an exemplary employee, always kind and respectful. The transformation was so significant that Jessica decided to promote him to cleaning supervisor, where he stood out for his dedication and humility. One Saturday afternoon, Jessica was visiting Walter and Margaret when her adoptive grandfather shared an unexpected revelation. "Jessica, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it, Grandpa Walter?" "When you stood up for me that day at the grocery store, it wasn't the first time someone had done that for me." "What do you mean?" "A long time ago, when I was a young teacher, I went through a very difficult situation. I was falsely accused of something I didn't do, and everyone turned against me. Only one person had the courage to defend me." "Who?" "Your grandmother. Margaret was the only one who believed in me and fought for my innocence." Margaret, who was knitting in the armchair nearby, smiled. "It was the right thing to do. I knew you were incapable of any wrongdoing." "Because of that defense," Walter continued, "I was able to keep my job and my dignity. Years later, when you stood up for me at the grocery store, it felt like history was repeating itself, as if you two shared the same courageous heart." Jessica felt a deep emotion, realizing the courage she had shown was inherited from her grandmother. It was as if love and justice were family traits. 3 years after graduating, Jessica married Brian, a young accountant she met in college. The wedding took place at the same church where Walter and Margaret had married, and the elderly couple stood as the newlyweds' godparents. During the reception, Walter gave another heartfelt speech. "Jessica, you came into our lives like an angel. You brought happiness back to your grandmother, gave me the chance to fulfill a dream I thought was lost forever, and even allowed me to have a granddaughter of the heart. May God bless your marriage with the same joy you've brought to our lives." Margaret, now 85 but still sharp and active, whispered in Jessica's ear, "You've learned a very important lesson, my dear. You've learned that kindness always comes back to us, sometimes in ways we never imagined." 5 years after graduating, Jessica finally took over as general manager of Riverside Grocery. Robert retired peacefully, knowing his business was in the hands of someone who shared his deepest values. On her first day as director, Jessica gathered all the employees in the company's event hall. Over 100 people were in attendance, including Walter and Margaret, who made sure to be there for every milestone of their granddaughter of the heart. "When I first started working here," Jessica said, "I was just a scared young woman who needed a job. I went through very hard times, faced humiliation and injustice, but I also met extraordinary people who taught me about dignity, respect, and second chances." She looked at Brandon standing in the crowd, smiling proudly. "We all deserve to be treated with dignity, no matter our position or the mistakes we've made. Starting today, I want this grocery store to be known not just for the quality of its products, but for the humanity of its employees." The audience applauded enthusiastically. "We'll create a scholarship program for employees who want to further their education. We'll implement a fair and transparent career plan, and we'll establish safe channels to report and address any form of abuse." After the meeting, Walter approached Jessica with tears in his eyes. "I'm so proud of you, my daughter. None of this would have been possible without you and Grandma Margaret. You taught me that small acts of kindness can change entire lives." 6 months later, Riverside Grocery was awarded as the best company to work for in the Denver area. The recognition came from a survey of employees across all local businesses, and the victory was unanimous. During the awards ceremony, Jessica was invited to give a talk on humanized management. The audience was filled with business owners from across the region, eager to learn the methods that had transformed an ordinary company into a model of excellence. "The secret," Jessica said during her lecture, "isn't in sophisticated management techniques or complex systems. The secret lies in treating every person as a human being worthy of respect, regardless of their position in the hierarchy." She shared the story of how she had been humiliated by an abusive manager, and how the kindness of an elderly customer had changed the course of her life. "Sometimes," she concluded, "all a person needs is someone who believes in them. A simple gesture, a word of encouragement, an act of justice can be the start of an extraordinary transformation." The lecture was so well received that Jessica began receiving invitations to speak at companies across the United States. She always accepted but never charged for the workshops, preferring to use these opportunities to spread the message that business success and humanity could go hand in hand. During one of these trips, Jessica received an urgent call. Margaret had fallen ill and been hospitalized. She immediately canceled all her commitments and returned to Denver. At the hospital, she found Walter holding Margaret's hand. She was conscious but visibly frail. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" "Better now that you're here, my dear." The doctor explained that Margaret had suffered a minor stroke, but would recover well with rest and proper care. However, she would need constant supervision. Jessica didn't hesitate to make a decision. She and Brian would move into the house next to Walter and Margaret's, so they could care for them with the attention they deserved. During Margaret's recovery, the family grew even closer. Brian, who had been raised only by his mother, found in the elderly couple the grandparents he had never had. Walter taught him chess, while Margaret passed down family recipes. One evening, as Jessica helped Margaret take her medicine, her grandmother gripped her hand tightly. "Jessica, I want you to know something." "What is it, Grandma?" "You gave me the greatest gift a grandmother could receive." "What gift?" "You brought the love of my life back to me. Without you, I would have left this world without ever seeing Walter again. You gave me the chance to live the happiest years of my life." Tears streamed down Jessica's face. "You gave me far more than I ever gave you, Grandma. You taught me about courage, perseverance, and the importance of always doing what's right. And you've passed those lessons on, my dear. How many people have you helped with your lectures? How many employees have benefited from your humanized policies? You've multiplied the good you received." Margaret fully recovered from the stroke, but the episode served as a reminder of life's fragility. Jessica decided she wanted to cherish every moment with her loved ones. She started a family tradition. Every Sunday, they gathered for a special lunch at her grandparents' house. Brian cooked, Jessica organized everything, and Walter and Margaret shared stories from their lives. It was during one of these lunches that Walter made an unexpected announcement. Jessica, Margaret, and I have decided to make a donation. What kind of donation? We want to create a foundation for underprivileged youth in the area, a program offering scholarships, job training, and psychological support. That's wonderful, but how will you fund it? Margaret smiled mysteriously. Your grandfather was always very frugal. All those years he worked as a teacher, he saved religiously. And I also have some savings from your grandfather George's pension. Together, Walter continued, we have enough to start the project, but we want you to be the foundation's president. Jessica was speechless. Her grandparents' generosity knew no bounds. But there's one condition, Margaret said. What? The foundation should carry all of our names, the Taylor Thompson Family Foundation, because it was our family, formed by love and kindness, that made all of this possible. The Taylor Thompson Family Foundation was officially established 6 months later. The first project was a scholarship program for young people from low-income families who worked in local businesses. 20 students were supported in the first year. Jessica managed to involve Riverside Grocery as a partner in the project, offering paid internships to the scholarship recipients. Other local business owners also joined the initiative, creating a support network for young people in socially vulnerable situations. The program was so successful that it caught the attention of the local media. Jessica was interviewed for a television program where she shared the entire story that had begun with a simple act of kindness at the grocery store. The message we want to share, Jessica said during the interview, is that small gestures can have big consequences. If each of us does our part to make the world a little more humane, we can create extraordinary transformations. The interview went viral on social media, and Jessica began receiving invitations to speak across the country. The story of the grocery store cashier who became a businesswoman through the kindness of an elderly man deeply moved people. During one of these talks in Chicago, Jessica met Kevin, a young entrepreneur who had founded a tech startup focused on social responsibility. He proposed a partnership to expand the Taylor Thompson Foundation model to other cities. Your story inspired me so much, Kevin said. I want to help bring this message of humanization to as many people as possible. The partnership led to the creation of the National Institute for Business Humanization, which within 2 years was already active in 15 US cities. The institute offered free consulting to businesses that wanted to implement more humane management practices. On the 3rd anniversary of the Taylor Thompson Foundation, a big celebration was held at the Denver Event Center. Over 500 people attended, including all the scholarship recipients who had benefited from the program, partner business owners, grocery store employees, and local officials. During the celebration, Jessica took the stage to give a speech. In the front row were Walter and Margaret, now 88 and 92 years old, respectively, but still sharp and active. 7 years ago, Jessica began, I was just a frightened young woman working as a grocery store cashier. I endured daily humiliations and thought my life would never change. Until one day, an elderly gentleman came through my line and treated me with a kindness I had forgotten existed. She looked directly at Walter, who smiled tearfully. That man didn't just change my life. He rediscovered the love of his youth through me. We formed a family of the heart, and together we decided to multiply the kindness we received. Jessica paused, visibly emotional. Today, we have over 100 young people benefiting from our scholarships. 15 businesses in our area have adopted humane management practices, and our message has reached thousands of people through talks and workshops. The audience applauded enthusiastically. But the most important thing, Jessica continued, is that we've learned a fundamental lesson. Kindness is contagious. When you treat someone with dignity and respect, you're planting a seed that can grow and multiply in unimaginable ways. After the speech, many people approached Jessica to share how her family's story had inspired changes in their own lives. Business owners reported that they had changed how they treated their employees. Workers shared that they had learned to value their colleagues more. Young people spoke about how the scholarships had transformed their future prospects. One of the most touching stories came from Brandon, who approached Jessica at the end of the party. Jessica, I want to tell you something. What is it, Brandon? My son asked me the other day who the person I admired most was. You know what I answered? What? I said it was you. A person who had the courage to forgive me when I didn't deserve it, who gave me a second chance when everyone expected me to be fired, and who taught me that it's possible to change no matter your age. Brandon was visibly emotional. My son said he wanted to grow up to be like you, a person who turns difficulties into opportunities and always treats others with respect. Jessica hugged Brandon, remembering how hard it had been to forgive him at first. Now, seeing the genuine transformation he had undergone, she knew she'd made the right decision. At the end of the party, when only the family remained in the hall, Walter asked to make a toast. I want to toast to Jessica, he said, raising his glass of grape juice. The young woman who taught me it's never too late to start over, that small gestures can have great consequences, and that kindness always finds a way to come back to us. And I want to toast to Walter, Jessica replied. The man who taught me that true wealth isn't in the money we accumulate, but in the lives we touch and transform. Margaret, who was seated in a wheelchair but still engaged, shakily raised her glass. And I want to toast to this crazy family that formed in a way no one expected, but that became the most precious thing in our lives. Brian, who had become a full-fledged member of the family, added, I want to toast to the future, to the grandchildren yet to come, to the stories that will be told, to the values that will be passed on. They toasted together, 4 generations united by love and the belief that it's possible to make the world a better place. 6 months after that party, Jessica received news that would change the course of her life once again. She was pregnant. The family's joy was immense, especially Walter and Margaret's, who could hardly wait to meet their first great-grandchild. During the pregnancy, Jessica decided to write a book telling her family's entire story. She wanted to record every detail so future generations would know how it all began. The book, titled Small Gestures, Great Transformations, was released when her son Ethan was 6 months old. All proceeds from the book went to the Taylor Thompson Family Foundation, allowing the programs to expand to 3 more cities. On the day of the book launch, held at the most traditional bookstore in Denver, Jessica was nervous. She had never imagined becoming a writer, but she felt she had an important story to tell. The bookstore was packed. Walter and Margaret sat in the front row with little Ethan in their arms. The couple, now in their 90s, rarely left home, but they wouldn't have missed their beloved granddaughter's book launch for anything. During the presentation, Jessica read an excerpt from the final chapter. I've learned that life isn't about the obstacles we face, but about how we choose to face them. It's not about the humiliations we endure, but about how we decide to respond to them. And most of all, I've learned that small acts of kindness can create waves of transformation that spread far beyond what we can imagine. After the reading, a young woman in the audience raised her hand. Jessica, what advice would you give to someone going through a tough situation at work like you did? Jessica thought for a moment before answering. First, never accept being treated with disrespect. Have the courage to stand up for yourself, even if it comes at a cost. Second, try to be kind to those around you, even when the world seems hostile. Sometimes a simple act of kindness can be the start of an extraordinary transformation. And third, never give up on your dreams. Circumstances can change in an instant, and you need to be ready to seize opportunities when they arise. An elderly woman in the audience asked another question. How did you keep love alive after so many years apart? Margaret, who was holding her great-grandson, asked to respond, True love doesn't age, my dear, it only matures. When you truly love someone, that love stays tucked away in your heart, waiting for the right time to bloom again. Walter added, And when you get a second chance at happiness, you don't waste a single second. Every moment together becomes precious because you know the value of what you almost lost. The book launch was a success. The book became a regional bestseller and was later adopted by schools and companies as study material on human relationships and personal transformation. 2 years later, when Ethan was already running around his great-grandparents' house, Jessica received an unexpected invitation. The Department of Education wanted her to develop a national humanization program for public schools. "It's a big responsibility," Brian said when Jessica told him about the invitation, "but it's also the chance to take our message across the country." Jessica discussed the proposal with Walter and Margaret. The elderly couple, now very advanced in age, encouraged her to accept. "My dear," Margaret said, "you have a mission in this life, a mission to spread kindness and transform lives. You can't turn down an opportunity like this, but it would mean constant travel, less time with you." "Jessica," Walter interrupted, "we've already had so much more time together than we ever dreamed possible. Now it's your turn to soar higher and touch even more lives." Jessica accepted the invitation and began working part-time at the Department of Education, developing a program to be implemented in schools across the United States. The program focused on human values, respect for differences, and peaceful conflict resolution. The pilot project was launched in 50 schools across 10 different states. The results were extraordinary: a significant reduction in bullying, improved teacher-student relationships, and increased student self-esteem. During one of her trips to monitor the program's implementation, Jessica received a call that changed everything. Margaret had been rushed to the hospital. She immediately cancelled all her commitments and returned to Denver. At the hospital, she found Walter holding Margaret's hand as she lay sedated. The doctor explained she had suffered another stroke, this one more severe. "What's the prognosis?" "It's hard to say. We'll know more in the next 48 hours. Jessica stayed at the hospital day and night, alongside Walter and Brian. Ethan, now 3 years old, didn't understand why his great-grandmother was sleeping so much, but sat quietly in the adult's laps. On the second day, Margaret woke up. She was weaker but conscious. "Where's my granddaughter?" "I'm here, Grandma." Margaret smiled faintly. "I need to talk to all of you." The family gathered around her bed. With effort, Margaret began to speak. "I want you all to know. I lived the happiest years of my life after we found each other again. Jessica, you gave me a gift I never knew I could receive. The chance to die, loved and surrounded by family." Walter squeezed her hand tightly. "Don't talk like that, my love. You'll recover just like last time." "Walter, my dear, we both know this life isn't eternal, but the love we built is. And it will live on through Jessica, Brian, Ethan, and all those who come after." Margaret turned to Jessica and said, "I want you to keep spreading kindness in the world. I want you to tell our story to as many people as you can. And I want you to teach Ethan that small gestures can change entire lives." She closed her eyes, tired from the effort of speaking so much. "And I don't want you to be sad when I'm gone. I want you to remember all the joys we shared together." Margaret partially recovered from that crisis but grew weaker. She needed constant care, and Jessica decided to temporarily step away from her work at the Department of Education to look after her grandmother. Over the following months, the house transformed into a center of loving care. Jessica hired a nurse but insisted on being involved in every aspect of Margaret's care. Walter, despite his advanced age, never left his wife's side. He spent hours beside her, reading books aloud, playing old songs on the radio, or simply holding her hand. Ethan, though young, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He played quietly near his great-grandmother, sometimes singing the lullabies she had taught him. One afternoon, Margaret asked to speak with Jessica alone. "My dear granddaughter, I want to ask you something." "Anything, Grandma." "When I'm gone, take good care of Walter. He'll be very lonely." "You're not leaving us anytime soon." "Jessica, I feel my time is coming, and that's all right. I've lived a full life, reunited with my great love, watched you grow into a wonderful woman, and met my great-grandson. I have no complaints." Jessica held her grandmother's fragile hand. "But promise me you'll look after Walter. He dedicated his whole life to loving me. He deserves to be cared for with tenderness in the years he has left." "I promise, Grandma." "And promise me you'll keep doing good, that you'll never give up on making the world a better place." "I promise that too." Margaret smiled, seeming relieved. "Then I can go in peace, knowing our family is in good hands." Margaret passed away peacefully on a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after that conversation. She was asleep with Walter beside her, holding her hand. Jessica was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard Walter call her softly. "Jessica, come here, please." When Jessica entered the room, she immediately saw that Margaret was gone. Walter was calm, gently stroking his wife's face. "She went peacefully," he said. "She was sleeping, without any pain." Jessica hugged Walter, and the two cried together, but it was a cry of gratitude for the wonderful years they had shared. Margaret's funeral was a testament to the impact she had on people's lives. The church was packed, with hundreds paying their last respects. There were employees from Riverside Grocery, scholarship recipients from the foundation, neighbors, church friends, and many others touched by the family's story. During the ceremony, Jessica gave a heartfelt speech. "My grandmother taught me that love has no age, that kindness always comes back to us, and that small gestures can have great consequences. She lived by these lessons until her last day." After the funeral, the family returned home. Walter seemed to have aged 10 years in a single day. Losing Margaret had been a devastating blow. Jessica kept her promise and devoted herself entirely to Walter's care. She and Brian moved permanently into their grandparents' home, turning it into a multi-generational household where love and care flowed naturally. Ethan, now 4, became the ray of sunshine in Walter's life. The boy had a special way of making his great-grandfather smile, whether by telling made-up stories or showing him his drawings. 6 months after Margaret's passing, Walter was emotionally steadier. He had established a routine of morning walks with Ethan and Brian, afternoons of reading, and evenings watching his favorite TV shows. One afternoon, he called Jessica for an important talk. "Jessica, I have a proposal for you." "What is it, Grandpa?" "I want you to go back to work at the Department of Education." "But I can't leave you alone." "I won't be alone. I have Brian, Ethan, the nurse, and I'm sure Margaret would be very upset if she knew you gave up your dreams to take care of me." Jessica hesitated. "Besides," Walter continued, "I have one last project for us to do together." "What project?" "I want to turn this house into a community center for seniors, a place where people my age can come during the day, talk, do activities, and not feel alone." Walter's idea was brilliant. The house was large, had a spacious garden, and was located in a quiet residential neighborhood. Like a day center. Exactly. During the week, seniors from the area could come here from 8 to 5. We'd have activities, meals, games, and conversations. And at night, the house would go back to being our family home. Jessica was thrilled by the proposal. It was a way to honor Margaret's memory while giving Walter's life new purpose. "How do you plan to fund this?" "By selling the land Margaret inherited from her first husband. She always wanted to do something useful with it, but never knew what. Now I do." The Margaret Wilson Community Center opened a year later. The house was adapted to accommodate up to 20 seniors a day, with accessibility ramps, adapted bathrooms, and a kitchen equipped for group meals. Jessica managed to balance her work at the Department of Education with coordinating the center. She traveled to Washington, D.C. 3 days a week and spent the other 4 in Denver, overseeing the center's activities and caring for the family. The center was an immediate success. Seniors in the area finally had a place to meet, talk, make new friends, and participate in stimulating activities. Walter became the informal coordinator, always ready to listen to stories and offer advice. One of the center's most frequent visitors was Mrs. Eleanor, an 85-year-old woman who had recently lost her husband. She and Walter became close friends, sharing their experiences of grief and resilience. "Walter," Eleanor said one afternoon, "you're lucky to have a family like Jessica and Brian." "I really am," Walter replied. "But do you know the most beautiful part of all this?" "What?" "Our family wasn't formed by blood, but by the bonds of the heart. Jessica adopted me as her grandfather. I adopted her as my granddaughter, and together we created something bigger than ourselves." 2 years after the center opened, Jessica received exciting news. She was pregnant again. Ethan was 6 and had asked for a little brother as a birthday gift. "Do you think it'll be a girl this time?" Ethan asked, placing his hand on his mother's belly. "We don't know yet, sweetheart, but whether it's a boy or a girl, they'll be very loved." Walter, now 94, was overjoyed at the news of becoming a great-grandfather again. "Margaret would be so happy," he said, his eyes misty. "She always dreamed of a house full of grandchildren and great-grandchildren." The pregnancy went smoothly, and Emma was born on a spring morning. She was a calm baby with big, expressive eyes who quickly won over the whole family. Ethan became a model older brother, always eager to help care for his little sister. Walter spent hours gazing at the baby in her crib, marveling at the miracle of life. "She has Margaret's eyes," he often said. When Emma turned 1, the family threw a big celebration at the community center. All the elderly members of the center participated, along with employees from the grocery store, foundation scholars, and friends from every stage of Jessica's life. During the celebration, Walter gave a speech that moved everyone. "When I met Jessica 8 years ago, I was just a lonely old man shopping at the grocery store. Today, I'm a great-grandfather to 2 wonderful children. I have a family who loves me, and I coordinate a center that serves dozens of seniors in our community." He paused, visibly emotional. "This taught me that life can surprise us at any age, that it's never too late to start over, to form new bonds, to find a new purpose." The audience applauded enthusiastically, and it also taught me that kindness is the most powerful force in the universe. It was Jessica's kindness that brought Margaret back into my life. It was her kindness that created this family. And it's the kindness of all of you that makes this center such a special place. After the speech, many people approached Walter to share how his family's story had inspired changes in their own lives. A young grocery store employee said she had decided to study business administration after learning about Jessica's journey. A local business owner admitted he had completely changed how he treated his employees. An elderly woman from the center revealed she had reconciled with a daughter she hadn't spoken to in years. "You have no idea how much good you do just by being who you are," the elderly woman told Jessica. That night, after the celebration had ended and the children were asleep, Jessica and Walter sat on the porch to talk. "Grandpa, are you happy?" "Happier than I ever imagined I could be again, my dear. Sometimes I think about Grandma Margaret and feel sad she isn't here to see the children grow up." "Jessica, your grandmother is here. She's in the values you pass on to Ethan and Emma. She's in the kindness you spread wherever you go. She's in the love that keeps our family together." Jessica smiled, feeling the truth in Walter's words. "And besides," he continued, "Margaret lived long enough to see our family was safe, that you had found your path, that love had triumphed. She left in peace because she knew her legacy was secure." 3 years later, when Emma was 4 and Ethan was 9, Jessica published her second book, The Heart Center, which told the story of the community center's creation and the transformations it had brought to seniors' lives. The book became a national bestseller and was translated into multiple languages. The Taylor Thompson family's story began inspiring people in other countries, and Jessica started receiving invitations for international speaking engagements. One of the most memorable was at a university in England, where Jessica spoke to social work students about the importance of caring for the elderly. "Aging," she said, "is not the end of life, but a new phase that can be rich in experiences and relationships. My grandfather Walter at 97 is still learning, teaching, loving, and changing lives." After the lecture, a student asked a question that stayed with Jessica. "How do you keep the energy to keep doing good, even after all these years?" Jessica thought for a moment before answering. "Because I've learned that doing good isn't something you do for others. It's something you do for yourself. Every act of kindness I practice makes me a better, more complete, happier person. The good I do comes back to me multiplied." Back in the United States, Jessica found Walter frailer. At 97, he was still sharp and active, but his mobility had declined. He now used a wheelchair and needed more care. "Don't worry about me," he told Jessica. "I've lived much longer than I expected and been far happier than I deserved. You deserve all the happiness in the world, Grandpa." And I had it, my dear. I found my great love again, gained a wonderful family, saw projects I never imagined come to life. I can go whenever God wills, with no regrets. Ethan and Emma, now 11 and 6 years old respectively, took turns caring for their great-grandfather. Ethan read books to him, while Emma drew cards and sang songs. "Great-Grandpa," Emma asked one afternoon, "do you miss Great-Grandma Margaret?" "I miss her very much, my sweet girl, but I'm also grateful I had the chance to love her." "When you die, will you see her in heaven?" Walter smiled at the innocence of the question. "I hope so, Emma. And I hope from there we can keep watching over all of you." Jessica, listening from the kitchen, felt her eyes fill with tears. Walter's simplicity and wisdom still touched her heart deeply. One winter morning, Walter didn't wake up. He passed away in his sleep peacefully without suffering. Jessica found him in bed, a serene expression on his face, as if dreaming of something beautiful. "He went just like Grandma Margaret," Jessica said to Brian, "in peace without pain, surrounded by love." Walter's funeral was even more crowded than Margaret's. Hundreds came to pay their last respects to the man who had become an inspiration to the whole community. During the ceremony, Jessica gave a speech that captured her family's extraordinary journey. "My grandfather Walter taught me that life can surprise us at any moment, that a simple meeting at the grocery store can change the fate of many, that true love has no expiration date, and that kindness is the most valuable legacy we can leave for future generations." After the funeral, the family faced an important decision about the community center. Without Walter to coordinate activities, they needed a new structure. Jessica decided to professionalize the center fully, hiring a specialized team for elderly care. She also expanded services, offering physical therapy, occupational therapy, and psychological support. The Margaret Wilson Community Center became a national model for compassionate elderly care. Jessica began consulting for other cities, wanting to replicate their approach. 2 years after Walter's passing, while organizing his documents, Jessica found a letter addressed to her. It was sealed and dated, "To be opened after I'm gone." Hands trembling, she opened it. "My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, I've already gone to reunite with my beloved Margaret. Don't be sad. I lived the happiest years of my life with all of you. I want you to know you were far more than a granddaughter to me. You were my salvation, my joy, my reason to keep going after losing Margaret the first time. I leave you and your family one last surprise. A bank account in your name with all my remaining savings. Use it to expand the projects that help others. I know you'll use it well. But more important than money, I leave you the values we built together. Kindness, respect, compassion, the belief that small gestures can change the world. Teach this to Ethan and Emma. Tell them our story, how we met, how our family came to be, how love triumphs over all hardships. And always remember, you didn't save me that day at the grocery store, we saved each other. And together, we created something far greater than ourselves. With all my love and eternal gratitude, your grandfather Walter," Jessica cried as she read the letter. But they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. Walter had left a legacy that went far beyond money. He had left behind a united family, transformative projects, and a message of hope that would continue to spread across the world. With the resources Walter left, Jessica created the Margaret Wilson National Centers Network, which within 5 years was present in over 50 US cities. Each center followed the same principles: compassionate care, respect for the dignity of the elderly, and intergenerational integration. Ethan, now 15, showed interest in following in his mother's footsteps. He actively participated in the original center's activities, helping with recreational programs and displaying remarkable maturity for his age. Emma, 10, had inherited Margaret's artistic sensitivity. She organized musical performances for the seniors at the center and was learning piano from one of the attendees who had been a music teacher. One day, Ethan asked a question that surprised Jessica. "Mom, do you think I'll find my purpose by helping others too?" "I don't know, my son. Your purpose might be completely different from mine. What matters is that it makes you happy and contributes to a better world. But I want to continue the work you, Grandpa Walter, and Grandma Margaret started." Jessica smiled, moved by her son's maturity. "If that's truly what you want, you'll have my full support. But remember, what matters most isn't what you do, but how you do it. With love, respect, and dedication." 10 years after Walter's passing, Jessica turned 50. The family threw a surprise party at the community center, bringing together everyone touched by their story over the years. Former employees of Riverside Grocery were there, scholarship recipients from the foundation who had graduated and built careers, seniors who attended the centers, government officials, and hundreds inspired by the Taylor Thompson family's message. During the celebration, Ethan, now 25 and a psychology graduate, gave a heartfelt speech. "My mom always says she was saved by a kind elderly man in a grocery store, but I see it differently. I see a brave young woman who dared to stand up for a stranger when it could have cost her job. I see a woman who turned pain into purpose, humiliation into humanity, struggles into opportunities." Emma, now 20 and studying occupational therapy, added, "And I see a family that proved love doesn't need blood ties to be real, that kindness is contagious, and that small gestures can truly change the world." Jessica, moved by her children's words, took the stage to thank everyone. 25 years ago, I was a frightened young woman desperately needing a job. Today, I'm the mother of 2 wonderful children, a grandmother in spirit to hundreds of seniors, and the coordinator of projects benefiting thousands across the country. She paused, looking at the crowd of smiling faces. But true wealth isn't in professional achievements or completed projects. It's in the human connections we build, the love we share, the kindness we spread. Jessica ended her speech with a message that summed up everything she'd learned. If there's one lesson our family can leave the world, it's this: never underestimate the power of a kind gesture. Never think you're too small to make a difference, and never stop believing love can transform everything. The party ended with everyone singing Margaret and Walter's favorite song, the one they used to dance to when they were young. It was a way to honor the 2 elders who had started it all and whose legacy lived on through the generations. That night, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, Jessica sat on the porch where she used to talk with Walter. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, Grandma, for teaching me that life can be a work of art when painted with the colors of kindness and love." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tree Walter had planted in the garden in honor of Margaret. Jessica smiled, feeling as if they were there, in some way, approving all that had been built. Ethan and Emma came out to the porch, each carrying a cup of tea. "We couldn't sleep," said Emma. "We kept thinking about the party, about the stories we heard today." "And the stories we'll still create," Ethan added. The 3 of them sat together on the porch, gazing at the garden bathed in the light of the full moon. This was a family that had formed unexpectedly, grown through challenges, and been strengthened by love. "Mom," Emma said, "when I have children, will I tell them the story of how it all began?" "Of course you will, my dear, and they'll tell their children. That way, Grandpa Walter and Grandma Margaret's message will never be forgotten. And maybe," Ethan added, "our descendants will find their own ways to spread kindness in the world." Jessica hugged her 2 children, feeling deep gratitude for the extraordinary journey her family had taken. From a simple, humiliated grocery clerk, she had become a respected woman, a loving mother, and an agent of social change. But more important than any external achievement, she had learned life's most valuable lessons: that kindness always comes back to us, that love has no age or expiration date, that small gestures can have extraordinary consequences, and that a family can form in unexpected ways when bound by the ties of the heart. As the night deepened and the stars shone over Denver, Jessica knew her family's story would continue to spread, inspiring others to choose kindness, stand for justice, and believe in the transformative power of love. And somewhere, she was certain, Margaret and Walter were smiling, knowing the legacy they had begun with a simple act of kindness in a grocery store would keep flourishing for generations to come. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a heartfelt comment. Do you think Jessica made the right decisions? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like the video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other touching stories.